morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the part of the world you are watching from. You're welcome to online lectures with Fametante the schoolboy. Today, we'll take a look at biology. Today, we'll take a look at biology, and the topic is variation in population. The topic is variation in population, part 1. This is our first contact on this topic. So today's lecture will just be a kind of introduction, and we'll see how far we can go. Excuse me. We'll see how far we can go. Okay. Now, what is variation? Actually, let's start from living organism. Living organism for the purpose of identification. So, living organisms are classified. So, we have different classes, and we have these from phylum, kingdom, as the case may be. You come down to we have 5 main kingdoms: kingdom Monera, kingdom Protista, kingdom Fungi, kingdom Plantae, kingdom Animalia. Then these kingdoms, we have inside these kingdoms we have different phyla. Then we also have classes, phyla or divisions, depending on the one you are talking about. If you're talking about plants, you talk about division. Then you go down to classes, move down to order, family, order, go again down to what? To species. Now, organisms are placed under this depending on their features, the differences in their features. So as you go down the hierarchy, the differences minimizes. The difference between these organisms minimize. But at the topmost level, where they have wide differences, just imagine I'm a human being under kingdom Animalia. Cockroach is also under kingdom Animalia. What difference between human being, just look at me, and cockroach, wide, the difference is much, but we are under the same what? Kingdom. But as we move down, you go down to mama. I'm a mammalian. Look at cow, look at goat. Even though yes, the difference is still there, but at least to some extent there's 1 or 2 similarities, ranging from the reproduction, the breastfeeding. They also breastfeed. But if you still go down, we are not in the same species. So now, but within species, as I am now, compared with another human being, Homo sapiens, we are in the same species. Even intra-species, within a particular species, you still have some differences, 1 or 2 differences. This is what is called variation. So when you talk of variation, you talk of what? Intraspecific differences, difference in the features in a particular what? Species. Usually human being as an example. Ranging from the color of my skin, my height, and what have you. These are what we call what? Variation. So what is variation? Variation is nothing but the differences within a particular what species, observed in a particular what species. Simply put, intra-specific differences between what organisms. So organisms that are in the same species, the differences observed between these organisms, we call these differences variations. Okay, there are two main groups of what variation. There are two main groups of variation. We have the morphological variation and the physiological variation. Two main groups are what? Morphological variation and what? Physiological variation. But before we go into that, there's something I want to point out. What then, since the organism in the same species should be the same in all ramifications, then what causes this difference, this variation in species? Can be caused by what? Inherited characteristics. It can also be caused by environmental or acquired, inherited, nature and nurture. Inherited, nature, environmental or acquired, nurture. Before we continue, our reference book for today is Modern Biology for Senior Secondary School by Sarojini D. Ramarengam, as revised by Lucy I. Akunwa and JBC Obidiwe, revised edition 2018, and we also have past question paper for JAMB, WAEC, and what have you. So, without wasting time, let's continue. So, I said that what leads to this variation is because of the effect of what? Inherited characteristics, nature, and acquired or environmental characteristics, which are what we call them what? Nurture. So even within the inherited characteristics, how can it happen? During sexual reproduction, there is this gene combination from the two parents. So gene from one parent will combine with gene from the other parent, and it will bring a lot of variation. And you also have the one we call mutation. Mutation in the gene and chromosome can also lead to what? Variation. Now let's continue. So let's go back to what we are, morphological and what? Physiological variation. So before we do that, I wrote out continuous and discontinuous. How do we factor this one in? These are the two main groups, but either of these can, some of the morphological features can also be what? Continuous, and some can be what? Discontinuous. The same thing here. So what is now continuous? So under here you can see some that are what? Continuous or discontinuous. So what is now continuous and what is discontinuous variation? So discontinuous variation, they are those variation that is not distinct. They're not distinct. They show gradual transition from one extreme to the other extreme. It's not a distinct feature. You cannot say this is this and this is that. It shows a gradual transition. That's what we mean by what? Continuous. It is continuous. It's not discrete. Example of such is height. Height of an individual shows a gradual transition from being small or short as case may be, to being growing and becoming tall. Is a transition. So such variation is not what? Is continuous. Now, what of discontinuous variation? Discontinuous variation gives distinct, you see, distinct difference. It's like there's no gradual transition. If it is either this or it is not this. There's no intermediates. It can be this or it's not that. No intermediate. So that's what we mean by what? Discontinuous what? Variation. So there's a sharp difference. There's sharp difference between the what? These features. Okay. So based on this now, we'll go down to take them one after the other. Okay, here now, you may say, okay, you will look at somebody's earlobe and say, this person has earlobe. This person does not have earlobe. You cannot say, hey, this person's earlobe is gradually becoming disappearing, or there's no intermediate. The person has it or he doesn't what? Have it. The person can test PTC or the person cannot test PTC. What is PTC? PTC is beta. PTC is what? Phenyl thiocarbamide. The person can test it or the person cannot test it. There's nothing like the person is now gradually testing it to he now cannot test it now. No. The person can test it or the person cannot test it. So let us now go into, so as I'm describing each of these features, any of them that is continuous, I'll point at. Any of them that is not continuous, each of these variations, sorry, any of them that is continuous, I'll point at. Any one of them that is not continuous, I'll do what? I'll point it out. So now let's go over to what? Morphological variation. So what are morphological variation? These are physical, actually, basically, morphology of an organism talks about what? The form in which the organism exists and the structure of the organism, both internal and external. The form in which the organism exists and the structure of the organism talks about what? The morphology of the what? Organism. So, by morphology gives you gives information on the physical appearance, how the organism appear, physical appearance, the one you can see, touch. So, because all these organisms appear like this, you can actually what? Identify the organism. Because you can talk of how the organism appears. So you can actually, anywhere you see the organism, you can identify the organism. Because you know how the organism looks like. So that's what morphological features do. So this intraspecific, this variation, also you see it, how this, even though they are the same species, this one looks like this one looks like this. It differentiates them. So it's what? Form of what? Variation. Examples of such features, you see, you notice the differences between organisms in the same species as follows. You can start off to say the size of the organism. Even though they are the same species, you see some that one is smaller, one is bigger. Good. Now, even the color of the organism, these are morphological variation. There will be variation in the color, the size, the color. Then, talk of what? Fingerprint is also there. Fingerprint is also there, and many of them. So, let's take up the size. Okay, before we go into that, I want us to talk about the what? Physiological what? Variation. I don't want our lecture to be very long lecture so that you can actually assimilate it. We'll break it down bit by bit, slow and steady, so that you to sit down, watch the lecture, understand it. Alright, I'll talk of what? Physiological variation and list them, then we'll stop here. In our next class, we'll then go deep into the what? Physiological variation and discuss physiological variation. That will be the part 2 of this lecture. Now let's look at, let me just introduce physiological what? Variation. So what is physiology? Physiology came from the word physiology. So what is physiology? Physiology talks about what? The functions and activity of living organism. That structures, the form and the structure, you notice in the morphological features of the organism. Now, what are the functions and activities of these structures and forms of the organism? Because a form of organism may help the organism to achieve one or two things, yes. So what are the functions and activities? So that's what we do, what we look at now. So that's a physiology for you. The functions and activities of what living organism. Now those structures, what are the functions and what activities? So actually, different parts of the body contributes in one way or the other to the function and activity on living what? Organism. So the variation in physiological features is not physical. It's not what you can just like in morphological. No. This is more of what is happening. Function, not just what you can touch or see. Am I communicating? So these are not apparent. You cannot see it. You cannot do what? See it. Examples of physiological features, or better still, example of variation, term physiological, are variations in behavioral pattern. Yes, the way individuals behave. Variation in our respective behavioral pattern is what? Physiological what? Variation. And variation in the ability to roll the tongue, yes. Some can roll their tongue, but some cannot do what? Roll their tongue. The ability to do that. And the ability to do what? The ability to do what? Test what? Phenyl what? Thiocarbamide. As you can see now, testing of phenyl thiocarbamide is another physiological variation. But it's what? Is what? Is continuous. Is what? Is continuous. Good. Then blood groups. Differences in the blood groups is also what? Physiological what? Variation. In our next class, we'll go deeply into morphological variation. So we'll stop our lecture for today here. Today we succeeded in pointing out explaining what variation is, what causes variation, forms of variation, types of variation. I'll give examples under each of these groups. You can say forms or groups, anyone. Examples under each of these groups. So, but before we end this lecture, I would like to see if you can raise one or two questions from the JAM and or WAEC past questions that has to do with what we taught today. We can use it to review what we taught today, what we discussed today. Just a few seconds, let me get our past questions. Okay. 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 I have a question here. Question from 2008 JAM, question 40, as stated in Prep 50 Biology, UTME past question. So let me write it on the board. Okay, the question says, that's from page 68. The question says, this is JAM 2008, question 40. Okay, the question says, which of the following is a major cause of variation among living organisms? A, inbreeding. B, back crossing. C, sexual reproduction. D, gene dominance. D, gene dominance. As I said during the lectures, I pointed out something that yes, variation can occur as a result of what? Nature and nurture, gene. Under that, under the inheritable characteristics, the major one that plays a role in inheritable characteristics is what? The gene combination during sexual what? Reproduction. So here, all these things are. Here we have inbreeding, back crossing, gene dominance. The answer is what? Sexual what? Reproduction. That's the main, among all this, that is the major cause of variation among what? Living organisms. The answer is what? Sexual reproduction. Okay, let me see if I can get a question, another question from WAEC. I also have Prep 50 WAEC Biology from 1988 to 2003. So let me see if I can get a question from here on variation. Let's see what you can make out of it. Okay. One. I'm seeing evolution here, I'm not seeing variation. Let me see what I can make out of this. Okay. Let me pick more from JAM on this topic. Okay, let's. Okay, see another one here. I love these questions. Exactly what we discussed. Okay, this one says, in a population, comma, okay, sorry, in a population of living things, comma, the parameters size, comma, color, comma, height, weight, are examples of A, discontinuous variation, B, continuous variation, C, physiological variation, D. Okay. The question says this question is taken from, this is JAMB 2002 question 46. The JAMB 2002 question 46. The question says, in a population of living things, the parameters size, color, height, weight are examples of A, discontinuous variation, B, continuous variation, C, physiological variation, and D, non-heritable variation. Remember when we discussed the main groups of variation, we talk about physiological variation and what? Morphological and what? Physiological variation. And we said that some of the morphological variation, you will see some that are continuous, discontinuous, and what have you. Now, but here now they put everything here to confuse you. So you need to understand this before you can answer this question. Size is what you can see. You see the size is big, is small. So it's what? Morphological. Is what? Morphological. But there's no morphology here. There's no what? Morphology here. So we leave that main group. Yeah, this is morphological. Yes. Morphological. But you cannot see it here. So what do you now do? So let's go down to continuous and discontinuous. Size. Is size continuous? Or is it distinct? Is it discontinuous? Obviously, these are not physiological. That one is out of the game. This one is there to confuse you. So leave to this one. Let's focus on these two. This is discontinuous. Size, is it continuous or discontinuous? Size, is it discontinuous? Size, height, weight, they are continuous. They are what? Continuous. They are not discontinuous. The same thing with color. They are continuous. They are continuous. From color shades to a particular color. Size, gradual transition. Color, gradual transition. Height, gradual transition. Weight, gradual transition. So this This is not the answer. The answer is B, continuous. The answer is B, continuous. The answer is what? B, continuous. They are all what? Continuous. As you can see, they are all what? Continuous. So the answer to JAMB 2002 biology question 46 is what? B, continuous variation. So this is how you solve JAMB question. Understand the question. Don't just rush and start answering. Understand the question so you can get the answer. Analyze the question. Okay. So it seems we'll stop here for today. At least we've answered 2 questions. We'll stop here for today and continue next time. Thank you very much for your attention. Please, every day between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., 6 a.m., please try. Be available here. Because by God's grace, I may not stick to the time proper, but just know that within this range of 1 a.m. at least to 6 a.m., sometimes up to 7 a.m., I'm here live, teaching different subjects. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel, I post the full lectures. While in TikTok here, because TikTok is not, you can't post more than 10 minutes. You will see the preview of each of the lectures. So please rush to my YouTube channel, subscribe, click on the notification button so that anytime I upload full video, you get information on that. And I want us to get prepared because by God's grace, with time, I will start online quiz here. Online quiz where I will come, set a question on the board, give like 1 minute for those for us to be able to answer the question. Anybody that gets the answer, just you place a call, tell us the answer, and we publish the answer. At the end of the time, the winner will go home with what? Gifts. We used to do the battle online where people write, but we are moving now. We want to make it live. We want to make it live. As you do, you call immediately, give us the answer, and we'll take it off from there. So, but for now, please subscribe. Go to my Facebook channel. My Facebook channel is what? From Eternity, the Schoolboy. Follow my Facebook account so that anytime I upload lectures or any preview, you'll be among the first to do what? Receive notification. Thank you very much for your attention. God bless you. Stay glued to this. We are coming up with other lectures before our time elapses today. God bless. Please send this information. Share this with your friends, with your colleagues. Someone out there may be in need of these lectures. Bye-bye.